People really, they kind of know what to do. I mean, clients know what to do for the most part. Like the general elements of saving and investing and spending, they know what to do, but they just don't. Right, Brad?
Wait, are you trying to say that I mean, what's my role if that's the case? You know, aren't I supposed to tell them what to do? They don't know what to do. I think you're right though, Charles. For me, it's like, what are the two biggest issues we have in the United States? It's people not saving for the future and people spending more than they make. And I personally have yet to meet a human being, even my 9-year-old, who doesn't know better. So the two biggest problems we have, everybody knows better. They're not doing better. I think you're onto something.
It's kind of like this. I mean, it's this notion that people just think they're going to tell someone what to do, and then automatically it just goes away. Like they're just, the problem is just solved. Like I waved my magic wand of learning on a person, and now suddenly that client is just going to go, and for the rest of their lives, they're going to follow that advice. There's not going to be any extraneous forces that are going to get in the way of that, and it's just done. I mean, wouldn't that, like, if that was actually true, wouldn't that just totally disrupt not only the financial planning profession, but every other profession probably, because it was like a one-stop shop. I met with the planner back in 1986, and now I am set for the rest of my life from that one visit of learning, right?
It reminds me of a group of prostitutes. Okay. And let me explain. Let me explain before you go cutting me off and no longer want to host a podcast with me. So a group of brilliant psychologists got together and they decided to do an educational program for prostitutes. And the educational program was going to focus on health, safety, taking care of yourself. And it was this, brilliant group of researchers who got together and came up with a curriculum. And then I'm sure it was some intern in the back of the room, who's like, hey, wait a second, like, shouldn't we find out what they already know? Which is actually a brilliant question. And come to find out, they decided to do that. And come to find out, they had a better curriculum. They knew more than the experts did when it came to, how to maintain health, how to maintain safety. I mean, obviously, right? And collectively as a group, there was so much more wisdom in that group than the psychologists could have hoped to come up with. So it always, and actually that helps spark the whole field of motivational interviewing, which is one of the techniques that we teach financial planners to use. It just seamlessly goes into practice because it's conversational techniques, right? And just realizing that people already know what they need. Quite often they already know so much. And so to honor that before we jump in, giving people advice.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna. I didn't know we were gonna talk about the prostitution. I was thinking, okay,
I can tell by your face.
Yes. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, my face. Oh my gosh, we're talking about the psychology of prostitutes podcast, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's take a step back. We're going to dive into instincts here. That's our kind of our segue into.
That's what we were going to do. All right, so
that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about instincts. So, if you look at our big model, so there's a big wheel. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you've seen the wheel that kind of encompasses all the different things that are part of the book, that are part of our education programs, and we start with this kind of first element here of thinking about our instincts, right? And so, we have all of these different things, all of the what you're listening to right now to listen to this podcast, what you're using to listen to this podcast with, and all the other devices, they're updated all the time. My iPhone got an update last night. I mean, we constantly get updates. But the most important thing that we use, our brains haven't been updated for. Brad and I went back and forth when we were developing this curriculum about how long it was. I said that it was like, I don't know what I said. I said 50,000, and I think you were like at 100,000. Yeah. And then we looked at, I forget how that went, Brad, but we were back and forth, like how old our brains actually were relative to an update, right?
Right. Yeah. I think I won, but my memories usually leans in that direction around disputes.
Well, there's confirmation bias, which is not this episode, is the next bias, where you look for information that will, actually prove. So I think what happened was Brad said 100.
I ignored the other 10 sources and found the one that proved me correct. Yeah, that's what I like to do.
That's right. So he said 100,000. I said like 50,000. And then he found a site on Google that shared with me that said 100,000.
See, there
So
you
see how
go.
that works, folks? So yeah, we're all victim to it. So when you think about this element of instincts, getting into this kind of first phase of what we're doing here, that we have hunting and gathering brains, right? We're thinking about our brains are designed to for basic elements of safety or address an instant need that we have relative to hunger or reproduction or whatever it might be. Um, and that has real implications for us when it comes to our money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, the non-academic way to say it is that we're all crazy when it comes to money. And I think this is a really important thing to frankly embrace, because there's so much shame around money. And, people are ashamed they have too much, ashamed they have too little, ashamed of financial mistakes they make, which is one of the reasons that I try to publicly talk about mine as, one of the world's leading experts in this space. I mean, we're all screwed up when it comes to money, all of us. And that's where the financial instincts come in. That's where the cognitive biases in behavioral finance, it's just we're all wired to do it absolutely wrong. We're wired, for example, to be present focused and not future oriented. Think about it, like in terms of survival of our ancestors. And this is such a great model to think about this. Like anytime you're running into somebody engaging in some sort of destructive financial behavior that makes no cognitive sense to you when you're looking at them, it really helps to just imagine, how would this approach to life, how would this approach to materials, how would it have helped our ancestors to survive? Because we are the products of highly successful survivors, and 99.9% of our existence on this earth has been in hunter-gatherer groups that are roaming around. Not even the agricultural era. That's even new. We haven't even adjusted to that era in terms of our brain functioning, which is one of the reasons why we have such a problem with obesity. It's like we have not been able to evolve and adapt, to even having an abundance of food in that type of scenario. And so anytime you're running into one of these issues, just think, how would a cave person think? And how would this have helped them survive?
Yeah, so that'd be the ancestors that, I guess they would have been ancestors, but the people from tens of thousands of years ago that didn't run with the herd away from the lion, they're not ancestors of ours, right? They didn't make it. So even though you may think you have a crazy uncle, I mean, I know my nephews do, but even though they think you have a crazy uncle, you are the product of the relatively good decisions that were from survival back then, but now things have changed. And I mean, I think about this element of instant gratification, which is a bigger challenge now for clients, for all humans, but certainly for clients, than ever before. Right? We have made life frictionless. Right? That whether it's Amazon, whether it's ordering food, whatever it might be, all of that is designed to eliminate the friction so that we will make that purchase. And that element of instant gratification, which goes back to, they didn't have refrigerators back then. So if I was hungry, I had to go get something right away and eat it. But now that instant gratification could really work against us because we have so many different factors that make it so easy to satisfy whatever whim we have.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind too are since before the show, I was showing you all my TikTok swag, right?
You know what? I have to tell you guys, I should say guys, see you folks, but here it is. So if you're watching, I do go through the whole thing, show them all the different things. I'm going to sit back.
I didn't prepare for this either. These are just all near my desk. My favorite one, you're going to love this one, is this skateboard deck. Do I look like a skater? I don't know, but TikTok sent me a skateboard deck. So I want you to see this though, so that you know that I have status, so that you know that I'm important. And what's so fascinating about that is we give young people advice like, you shouldn't care what other people think, which is probably like one of the dumbest things that an adult has ever uttered to a child, right? Because we are wired to care about our status. We absolutely are. And what's so interesting is the counterculture people who don't care about status stuff, you understand that they have a whole status group and how countercultural you are. Like, I mean, are you countercultural enough? Like, I mean, who's the most countercultural? And it's one of those biases that it harms us to deny it. It harms us because then we become susceptible to it in a subconscious way. Like this one always comes up for me because I moved to Boulder, Colorado a few years ago. And when I was on Kauai, I drove a Toyota Tacoma truck because, well, I had all these rational reasons for wanting it, right? And all these things that made sense. And as I'm driving off the lot, driving home, I look around and everybody drives a Toyota Tacoma, right? Even the colors I picked. And I was just sort of struck by this. I had all these reasons why I wanted it. But really what it came down to is psychologically, I wanted to belong to the tribe. And so my status in the tribe mattered. And for me in Boulder right now, it's like, I want to buy a Sprinter van. And what's so crazy is I had all these reasons to buy a Sprinter van. And then I counted, because I usually will bike or walk to the office. And I counted one day about 12 of them from my house a mile away to my office in people's driveways. And I want it. Psychologically, I want it because other people have it. And so when we deny these types of instincts, that's when they hurt us. Being aware of it, you can counteract it, but you have to be aware of it.
I thought more people drove Subarus in Boulder. I
There are
thought
a
people
lot
were
of
going to
those
say
too.
Subaru.
Yeah, a lot of those.
So, I mean, the element of the herd instinct, which we kind of talked about a little bit, and thinking about, well, I mean, I think about FOMO, right? And, that, and we write about this and we teach about this, that, we get into crypto, and it's always interesting talking to advisors about crypto. And it's usually an emotional response and with good reason. But what to me is interesting relative to this specific area that we're focusing on today is that the successes are being touted and not necessarily the folks that are losing everything. We go on to social media. It's like the worst poker game ever, Brad, right? Because we know that in most cases, we are curating our lives. We're posting, the highlights for the most part. There are exceptions to that, but for the most part, we want to. You've already talked about status, self-presentation theory. If you want to Google that, that's a big area. And I've written about that in other books. But we want to put our best foot forward, and so we curate our lives. The problem with that, the reason why it's the worst poker game ever, is that we accept as reality for the most part what other people are posting on social media, even though they're doing the same thing. And so if we know the people, that's why they always say with Facebook groups, if you have a small group and you know who they are, it can actually work, right? You say, well, that's my crazy cousin. I know he's posting all those things, but his life's a mess, right? I mean, you kind of know that. The challenge is we don't know these people, and our clients don't know these people, and they're touting these successes from crypto, or saying that they're getting, a 25% return on something. And now they're coming to you, the advisor, and saying, I want that, right? And so that creates a huge challenge. Now you had a plan, everybody agreed to the plan. And again, it goes back to the beginning of this conversation. We knew what to do, but now there's forces that are kind of changing that relative to FOMO and all these other factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though we know it's fake, at least we sense it's fake. We feel like we're missing out. As soon as you said FOMO, I'm like, wait, what am I missing? We're wired for that. And during the pandemic, it was really in my face too. Just looking at social media, and I realized that the people who had kids would look at posts of people, cuddling up on the couch with a book, and some hot cocoa, and just be like, oh my gosh, my life would be so much better if I just had a little space to do that. And then people who were didn't have kids or were single would see posts of these smiley, happy families baking cookies, and just feel like, if only I was in this pandemic with other people. And it's just this is just part of how we are. I feel like as human beings, one of our instincts is to never be satisfied. Never be satisfied. And it's one of those instincts that I'm grateful for, because if our ancestors had been satisfied with outdoor toilet facilities, we'd all still have outdoor toilet facilities. I mean, I feel like it's part of our our instincts as a species, and our ability to adapt. And it's part of the reason why we have the quality of life we have right now compared to all of our ancestors, because people didn't settle. But obviously, it has to be tempered, because we can, we see this with people who have wealth, but they have this like scarcity mindset. They come from poverty, and it's never enough, right? And it's not a nefarious thing for them. Quite often it's out of anxiety. There's not enough, right? So I need to save more. And so, obviously we need to find a balance.
Let me think about just all those different factors that somehow get in the way of what that plan might be. And so, when we started with this first part, because we saw that this is kind of like the underlying beginning of all of these different factors that go into the psychology of financial planning. What we really wanted to do, or what we're doing in some of the um, in the educational programs, is really just lay that foundation, and also like reminding advisors that it's not just about telling them on in one specific instance, but it is actually constant care and feeding of the client, and maybe it's care and feeding of the financial plan, to constantly be reminding of the big picture, right? Where are we trying to get to? And the other part about that too is going back to this idea of friction. We can do lots of different things to make the good stuff frictionless, and make the bad stuff have lots of friction towards the bad stuff. So for example, we can live closer to a park or a gym, right? If physical fitness is our number one priority, then driving 20 miles to get to a fitness facility, that's a lot of friction. So we can eliminate that. Or we could even do little things like putting our running shoes next to the front door of the house, so that we're going to actually going to put them on and go to run. Or we could do things with our diet and whatnot. And I guess, Brad, from an advisor perspective, automation probably plays a big part of making the good stuff frictionless, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it harnesses that instinct we have for a status quo. It's called the status quo bias, where it takes energy, right, to change things. And so all things being equal, like, why put forth the energy? And so it can be bad. Like, if you're not saving for the future, the status quo bias is a major problem. But if we can get clients really excited about why they want to save, and have a real clear vision, and we're going to talk about that in future episodes, like the power of that, then what you want to do is capitalize on that by engaging in some sort of automation, because you'll have a status quo bias related to that too. Like, especially if it's something you're attached to, it's a goal you feel passionate about, you automate, you're not going to go change that. I mean, it requires a lot of energy to do that, a lot of steps you have to take, including telling yourself that this is no longer important to me. But the bottom line, Charles, is that let's go back to the friction. I realize I need to increase the friction on candy. Like, I need to like have it out of the house or something, like where it would require me to go get my car and go drive and get it. And the entire time I'm driving there, I can just like beat myself up about it. Like, what are you doing? I'll probably turn the car back and not get it. So I'm going to put some of that candy friction. Could we trademark that? That should be something. I don't know what that friction is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for me, it's like it's actually cookies, and I can't I can't have it in my place. If I have it, I'm gonna. Yeah, I am like a goldfish. If you dump a whole box of food into that goldfish bowl, the goldfish is gonna eat it. I'm like that with cookies. If I have it here, I'm just gonna eat it. And so for me, the friction is just don't have it here, right? And that helps. For the most part, that helps. It doesn't always help, but it does help. I actually, the ultimate, and OCD is not part of this any episodes of this podcast, although it probably should be. When the pandemic hit, I bought a treadmill, and I put it is right next to my bed. The treadmill is right there. And I actually continued, and I've run like 5 days a week. I do about 40 miles, but I have that thing. It is looking at me. It is right there. It is just part of life in this domicile, is that treadmill. And it works. It's probably going to kill my knees at some point, but it's friction. I don't know. That could be frictionless, or you could say it's actually creating friction, but that was a big step in an OCD world with the pandemic.
You're not throwing clothes on it or using it as a towel hanger. That's impressive. And also like literally you have to like walk over it, pretend it's not there. if you weren't going to use it. So that's great.
That's exactly right. And it also works for writing books too, by the way. You know, if you got a bunch of stuff, it's just staring at you, it's just looking at you.
Yeah. Don't we have a deadline looking at us? Speaking of writing book deadlines.
We do have a deadline looking at us, and it doesn't go away. It just and Brad and I talk like every day because we're building all this stuff, and so we're looking at each other in the face, and that's like I see Brad's face, I think deadline, like that's deadline.
It's a negative association.
Negative association.
Yeah. So psychology of financial planning, everybody, is done, and we're super excited about that. But we have a toolkit coming out associated with it that is just incredible. I'm very excited about it. But we do need to finish that, Charles.
Before we advertise it, we probably need to finish it.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I think you could buy it on Amazon. I think you could already get it on Amazon, something that's not even finished yet. Shakespeare never had these problems. I always joked about that with like other books. That, like you would, I don't know if you notice, like if you go and you check stuff, or you go and check like Amazon, you want to see if your book is there or whatever. This is completely irrelevant, but you suddenly, the algorithms start to know that you have an interest in this area. So like the last book I did this numb book, and I would get an email from Amazon saying, we think you're really going to love this book. And it was Numb. It was my book. And I thought to myself, I posted on social media. I was like, what if Shakespeare had this problem? Like, hey, I think you're really going to love Hamlet. I mean, like,
yeah. I mean, at this point, we should all just trust the algorithm, because chances are it knows you better than you know itself, or at least it knows your subconscious cravings and desires. It's a little bit scary.
It is a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that I would give that particular book 5 stars, but nevertheless, that's a different podcast. So we're really excited about this academy that we're doing. And Brad, this was your idea. So why don't you explain it?
Well, I've noticed in, so my teaching at the university, at Creighton University, and a lot of the professional development, it's like, and I want it myself. Bottom line is like, so I'm a member of some membership groups that, for me, it's focused on social media content creation and all this that I go to, and I check in, and I'm part of a community, and I realize that there's a lot of desire for that. And so the idea with the academy is we have some asynchronous trainings, of course, and we'll always continue to do that. But there is something that quite often people want more of an intimate connection, and they want to, talk about the latest and greatest and newest stuff. And so the academy had that in mind. It's a couple hours a month where we get together, we can talk through some of the content. We're creating one session to be more of a coaching session where planners can bring the latest thing they're concerned about, or particular case they want to talk about, as well as like a Facebook group that is exclusive to the academy. So just as a way to stay connected and stay current, and something that I enjoy, being a member of such groups around other areas of interest. So that was our thinking.
Yeah. And, it's like, I find in teaching like the executive programs that I've done, like you would have an open office hour online, and there's like 40 people enrolled, and you have 40 people showing up for the open office hour, just because you want to make things interesting and you want to have connection. And I always think about it, coming from education, and people, and I think it's the same with advisors, it's very counterintuitive, but they're actually lonely professions, because you're essentially, especially if you're working in certain business models, you don't have that connection with other people. You don't have that interaction to really kind of talk about some of the challenges. So we're really excited about that. You could visit psychologyofinancialplanning.com to enroll. We're going to start that in August of 2022. And we hope that you'll check that out. You could email us for the podcast. You could email us at scifinplan@gmail.com. It's a terrible email address. I just get it. I picked it out, but it's PSY and then finplan, FINPLAN @gmail.com. scifinplan@gmail.com. If you have a question for the podcast, we'll answer that. Or if you have an interesting anecdote, if you want to tell a story about how one of us was boring at a conference or something like that, whatever it might be.
Style advice, and anything that, if you have any suggestions on how Charles can improve his personality, anything like that, just send it our way.
That's true. Or maybe suggestions on how Brad could create a less hostile work environment. No.
We're less interested in your thoughts on that, but you send them all our way.
Kidding. It's great. Brad, it's great. We work together. It's every day. I spend time with him, which is wonderful. It's been a great collaboration. I should mention you can get the Psychology of Financial Planning podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and our new friends at iHeartRadio. And the audio engineer for the Psychology of Financial Planning podcast is Tim Dolbear, who puts all this together and makes it presentable. Next episode, Brad, we're talking about heuristics and biases. We're not going to go through the whole list, are we?
Sounds boring. No. We have to make that fun. All right.
We'll make it fun.
That's our promise.
We promise to make it fun.
Yes.
We won't go through all of them.
And relevant. We're going to make it relevant. I mean, that's the whole point. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Relevant. Yes. We're going to make it relevant.
Something you can use in your practice.
Exactly right. So visit us at psychologyofinancialplanning.com for all the stuff that we're doing. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.